relational research of the female and male reproductive system in the dimension of self. I'll start the discussion from its roots. Sexual self correlates to the dimension of self in terms of its nature, function, and roles. Where sexual self refers to the totality of oneself as a sexual being, including positive and negative concept of feelings. And according to the theories, Snell and Papini, 1989, sexual self-concept is described well along three dimensions that will be further explained along the discussion. As I've mentioned earlier, that sexual self correlates with the dimension of self in terms of the following. Nature, where it has different characteristics like relationship, communication, self-worth, education, values, contraception, and last but not the least, spiritually. The next is function. That focuses on the significance of sexuality to a person's sense of self, where self-care and mental health are two variables of this. Finally, the two extreme continuum are the masculine and feminine.
By exploring several dimensions of ourselves, we are reminded that ourselves are fluid, not set in stone or something like dolls that can be held still. The five fundamental dimensions of the self are the physical, mental, social, and emotional, and spiritual dimensions. Underneath this are just the specific components of the self, such as the social self, political self, economic or material self, philosophical self, physical self, and digital self. Physical and social, as I mentioned earlier, are two of the five dimensions of self, and physical self is an individual sense of who they are as a physical being. Body image or self-esteem are closely connected to one's physical self, where self-esteem refers to how you value or respect yourself as a person, whereas body image encompasses both your internalized and externalized judgments of your physical appearance. The concept of social self, on the other hand, pertains to our sense of belonging in light of our interactions with other people. And this can affect both our overall state of mind and the capacity to deal with the challenges of life. Home economics are taking place in both social and physical domains, as it encourages or provides a beneficial change in home life experiences and teaches people to hold a conversation or create a conversation, make smart choices within the context of their own lives. And they may experience a boost in their sense of worth and esteem because they will have a feeling of belongingness and significance within their own surroundings. And as adults, we already know that the way a family communicates with one another or works together has a meaningful impact on how a kid or child develops a feeling of connectedness, social skills, because everything starts at home, and as they hit puberty and develop into adulthood, they are heavily influenced by their home environments. Now, political self and digital self are also underneath social. Why? In terms of politic self, as stated in the PowerPoint also, is a characteristic of an individual that is interested with legislation or other political factors in politics is how socially organized humans settle disputes and establish plans for the future. Digital self is quite comparable to dramaturgical analysis by sociologist Irving Goffman, depicting the various sides of the self when put in certain situations of people. To put it simply, it is like when people are performing on stage or front stage and considered as actor, actress. However, in the digital self, it happens online. The philosophical self takes place in mental and spiritual dimension and is what sets us apart from one another due to the fact that we all possess unique fundamental qualities, and having a philosophical perspective guarantees you with the guidance and constraints that put you on the right path, and even more so if you hold religious beliefs, as it confirms the reality of a divinity beyond the scope of the human senses. Intense feelings or merely emotional outbursts can be triggered by spending time on social media, be it negative or positive, which is part of the digital self. Material or economic self consists of a person's possessions, and having such things is regarded as key to one's self-expression. And if you're too reliant on your possessions, having them may also make you feel unsatisfied and unhappy once they are gone. So, how does dimensions of self associates with sexual self? Well, sexual self requires an awareness of one's own body as well as familiarity with the concepts associated with various areas of the human body. Health in all areas, including sexual health, may be influenced by one's sense of self-esteem and self-sufficiency. The manner in which sexual conduct is performed is determined by socialization, but then it raises fascinating issues also because some are too embarrassed to say or share what thoughts they have in this matter, due to a number of factors, including the fact that the people who surround them are excessively judgmental, as pleasures for them are potent and have caused the destructions of many lives. And as a consequence of this, it induces others' mental thinking to be disturbed, and they eventually become emotionally damaged. And always keep in mind that our sexual self is intimately related to things that excites or arouse us. And there is absolutely no shame in giving into those desires as long as we do not inflict any pain or suffering on others.
The menstrual cycle helps your body prepare for pregnancy. A menstrual cycle typically lasts 28 to 29 days. However, each woman's cycle is unique. Menarche is the name of your first period. A first period often begins between the ages of 12 and 13. However, it can occur as early as age 9 or late as age 16. Menopause. Menopause is the time after your last period. Women often enter menopause between the ages of 51 and 52. Some women may not go through menopause until they are 60. The follicular phase, which lasts for 13 to 14 days and culminates in ovulation, begins on the first day of your period. A mature egg is released from an ovary after ovulation and travels down a fallopian tube to your uterus. The corpus luteum, which is made up of ovarian cells, releases progesterone and a tiny amount of estrogen after ovulation. The corpus luteum continues to generate progesterone after a fertilized egg implant in the uterine lining, maintaining the uterus thicker lining. Number 1. A sperm and an egg fertilize to create a zygote. Some sperm move up through the female uterus and vagina during sexual activity towards an egg cell. These genetic details mix when a sperm cells enter and fertilize an egg. 2. Development before and during implantation. The transformation of the zygote into an embryo, it takes a fertilized egg or zygote roughly 5 days to travel from the uterine tube to the uterus. At day 15, connection between the cell that will form an embryo create an embryonic disc. 3. The embryo develops throughout the course of 8 weeks, becoming a fetus by the end of week 10. A flat embryonic disc that has since differentiated into 3 layers is present in the embryo. 4. Beginning in week 10 of pregnancy, the fetus develops inside the uterus, fed by the umbilical cord supply of blood that is rich in nutrients. 5. To be able to reproduce, humans must develop either male or female gonads and genitalia. One chromosome that the sperm delivers determines whether they develop into males or females. This pair consists of either an X or a Y chromosome from the male sperm and an X chromosome from the female egg.
Female reproductive system. The female reproductive system consists of the ovaries, the uterus, the vagina, the fallopian tube, the external genitalia, and the mammary gland. The internal reproductive organs of the female are located within the pelvis between the urinary bladder and the rectum. We will begin learning the site of production of egg cell, or simply the ovum. This site is the ovary, one of a pair of female glands in which the eggs form and the female hormones estrogen and progesterone are made. Did you notice that the ovaries are connected to these tube-like structures? Yes, but they are not directly connected. If we look closely, there are finger-like projection which connects the two. These finger-like projections are called fimbriae. They are very important for receiving the ovum when released from the ovaries. The fimbriae help the ovum release and also help to sweep it into the tube present ahead. But why does the ovum requires the sweeping activity? Does it cannot travel alone? No, it can't. Unlike the motile sperm, The ovum is non-motile. It cannot move until it pushes or swept by some other cells. Now, these tube-like structures are called the fallopian tubes. And what do you think is their importance? Fallopian tube connects ovaries and uterus, but more important than this is that the fallopian tube are the site for fertilization. It is the fallopian tube where the sperm are able to fertilize the ovum, and from here, the zygote starts dividing and grow into an embryo. And where will this embryo go further? The uterus. The uterus, commonly referred to as the womb. It is the site of development of a baby. And when the growth of the baby is completed, it comes out to the mother's body through the vagina. Vagina is a small passage opens to the exterior. It is also the site where the sperm are received in the female's body. And on the other hand, same passages used for passing the baby out of the body during childbirth. The hormonal control of the female reproductive system. In female reproductive system, the hypothalamus produces or secretes a hormone called gonadotropin. It releases hormone which travel to the anterior pituitary gland, and it will cause the pituitary cell to release or secrete two important hormones known as the FSH or follicle stimulating hormone and LH, which is luteinizing hormone. So, what will these hormones do in the female body? Well, these hormones will travel to the female ovaries where the female eggs are produced. Once the follicle stimulating hormone enters the ovary, it will stimulate follicle maturation of the primary follicle, and so some of the primary follicle will mature into the secondary follicle. And while these follicles are maturing, they produce estrogen. Now, estrogen has many effects. It stimulates bone and muscle growth, endometrial growth, maintain female secondary characteristics, and maintain glands. Now, let's focus on the other hormone, the LH or luteinizing hormone. It tells the egg to ovulate and remaining cells called the corpus luteum to produce progesterone. The progesterone prepares the lining of the uterus for implantation. Endometrium thickening. It starts to become vascular and starts to thicken. It is beneficial for egg implantation. Hypothalamus is releasing hormone called gonadotropin. This will travel to the pituitary gland to secrete FSH and LH. Follicular phase is a phase where egg cells mature and ready to leave ovary for ovulation. Estrogen is for growth, that's why its level increases as the follicles grows in the ovaries. In ovulation, when the egg cell is not fertilized by the sperm, it will disintegrate after 24 hours and the secretion of progesterone will decrease. Then the endometrial lining in the uterus will shed, and that's how the menstruation takes place. But when the egg cell is fertilized by the sperm, the luteal phase happens. In ovulation, the egg cell is fully matured. The secretion of SHS and LH level decreases as a negative feedback. The hypothalamus receives that message that the egg cell is already fertilized and it will release hormones for fetal development. The progesterone level will increase for thickening of the endometrium lining rich with blood cells and blood vessels for preparing for pregnancy.
Male reproductive system organs of the male reproductive system and their structure. The male reproductive system contains external genitals, the penis, testes, and the scrotum, and internal parts including the prostate gland, vas deferens, and urethra. The male reproductive system is kept in good condition by a pair of sperm-producing structure called the testes, also known as testicles. Gonads are term for the testes. The ovaries are their female counterparts. Follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and testosterone are the main hormones that affect how the male reproductive system works. The three hormones, luteinizing hormone, which stimulate the production of testosterone, follicle-stimulating hormone, which stimulates spermatogenesis, and testosterone, which stimulate the development of male reproductive sex characteristics, and spermatogenesis, are the main regulators of the male reproductive system. The primary reproductive organs are the testes, which use a process known as spermatogenesis to produce sperm cells. Sperm and seminal fluid are produced by the glands of the male reproductive system. Semen, which carries and safeguards the sperm, is made of seminal fluid that is contributed by the prostate gland, seminal vesicles, and bulbourethral glands. Semen travels through a network of ducts during sexual contact in order to reach the female reproductive system.
The testes seminiferous tubules are where sperm are made. The epididymis is where immature sperm travel after leaving the testes, where they develop and are kept. The ductus deferens where exit the scrotum and enters the abdominal cavity through the aperture known as the inguinal canal is where sperm enter. The erect penis hardly make it simpler to put into woman's vagina during sex. Muscles surrounding the reproductive organs tighten in response to stimulate of erect penis pushing semen down. The urethra, the conduct system. The ejaculation is the act of the male pushing semen through his urethra out of his body. A man ejaculate may contain up 500 million sperm each time. Sexual intercourse, the act of a man and a woman engaging in sexual activity. The man's penis enters into the woman's vagina and stimulate until orgasm, ejaculation happen. When the reproductive act is complete, sperms are passed from the male body in the female, in the process fertilizing the female's egg, forming a new organism. The sperm and egg combine during fertilization to generate a zygote in one of fallopian tubes. The zygote then passes through the fallopian tube and develops into a morula. A blatocyst develops from the morula. Once it enters the uterus, the blatocyst subsequently undergoes implantation in which it burrows into the uterine lining. The X and Y chromosomes, often known as a human sex chromosomes, are closely bonded structure of DNA proteins found in human cell. These molecules hold the instructions necessary for the growth and operation of every living thing, including the growth of the physical characteristics and bodily components associated with each biological sex. With individual inherit 2 X chromosome, they normally become female, while they receive X and Y chromosome, they often become male. There are 7 to 8 weeks of pregnancy. Both sexes have known as a genital carriage. Genital carriage is a somatic precursor of gonads in both sexes. This is a unique premedium in organ formation because of its potential nature. Let's go back our topic. When does an embryo become male and female? The X organs of your unborn baby begin to form between 7 and 12 of pregnancy. All babies will develop female sex organs. If it weren't for the male hormone testosterone, the X chromosome send a signal to the body to start producing testosterone around week 7, which is when male genitals start to develop. A baby's genitals start to change from female to male about week 9. The genital ridge becomes latent as the penis develops, but about 14 weeks the penis characters actually stay the same. the prostate forming bud first show in a baby boy around 10 weeks and his urinary system is finished developing by 14 weeks. Around week 16 of pregnancy, your baby boy's body reaches peak levels of testosterone that comparable of the found in adult men. 16-20 weeks, testosterone levels start to shrink, and by 24 weeks, they return to the range seen in early puberty. About contrast, the pains of baby growth most during the third trimester and the testicles start to descend in week 26.